Welcome back. So just like last time, I kind of prepped a little bit here, so we are ready to just get going. Now to those of you who want to start using DTOs instead of just using the model classes, go and change it, it's up to you. But I'm going to for now just keep the model classes, and then I will change them later to DTOs when we get back to talking about more about how the DTOs actually work. I already talked a little bit about it, but I'll dive more into it later. So for now, we have the genre being passed in right here, and from the body in our request, I'll show you that in a second, and we're going to return the genre that was created when we're actually done. So we need some kind of method here to create a genre in the service. It's not there yet, so I'll go and create it. There we go. I'll kind of create that method first in the interface, right? Now that forces me into creating it into the implementation in a second, but I want to explain also that I'm going to return not an object, but an actual genre. Cool. Now I want to go to my implementation class, which is actually the genre service. And here I want to kind of say, in order to call yourself iGenre service, you need this new method I just made. Give it to me. Here's the create. Okay, I'll return underscore repository, and I'll do the create here as well. Now the repository again has the job of actually creating this genre right here. So I'll just let that guy do the job. Here we will do validation later, but not right now. We'll get back to unit testing. I promise it. But right now let's just pass it onward to the actual genre repository without even validating the data. I'll create this guy in the interface first for the genre repository. There we go. And now I'll go all the way down to our actual repository here, the new one, where we need to do the context work. So what I'll do here is, again, I'll go to the top and it'll say, you're not an iGenre repository, you need a new method. I'll say implement the missing members, kaboomy, and here we have the create. And how do we do a create? Well, first I'm going to save just an entity right here. The entity is going to be the thing that was created in the database. After that has been created, it's actually going to return an entity to me where it has an ID, because right now it won't have an ID. Okay, because it's not created yet in the database. And since we have auto-incremented IDs in the database with our current setup, I want to kind of get an entity back from the thing that was just saved in the database. How do we actually do a save? Well, how would you do it in a list? You would do an add, right? So in genres right here, we can actually do an add like this. And then I can pass in, should I pass in a genre model? No, I should pass in a genre entity. So let's make a new entity right here, a new genre entity. There we go. And that genre entity, we are going to pass in the ID. We don't have that, so we can't pass that in. We will pass in the name, and we'll pass in the genre's name right here from this object from the outside. And now we kind of called add in order to kind of create a new genre in the database. Now again, the difference between the genre we are kind of creating right here and this entity we're getting back is actually that entity is going to have an ID. So it's already being made with an ID when it's being returned. How do we do that? Well, we need to explain to the system that we want to get the entity back. So we are going to say .entity right here, and then actually right here is the entity that was just stored in the database with the ID it was receiving from the database. The final thing I need to do is, again, I need to return this, and again, in order to do that, well, you know what? I need to convert it. So I'll do a new genre right here, and I'll actually return a genre with a name, and that's going to be the entity name, doink, and I also want an ID, so that's going to be the entity ID. Now, of course, you could also use this guy here and just add the ID, but I just want to be sure that it's completely clean, the one I'm returning. One final thing you need to note, this is actually not going to save anything to the database. But you just said, no, I didn't say that. I just said this is going to create an SQL query. Go back. Okay, you're right, I didn't say that, but it is going to only create an SQL query. It's not going to execute the SQL query. The way to execute the SQL query is do a context.saveChanges. Now that's very valuable later on. If you for some reason want to add more than just this single thing, you could just keep going and add multiple entities or multiple table inserts, however many you want, and in the end you would do the save changes and they would all be executed at once. So you need to remember that save changes, and if you don't get an ID on your entity right here, that's probably because you forgot to save changes. So try and check out the code right here, put a breakpoint and try and run the code and see if that's your actual problem right here. There we go. Now that should actually be enough for us to run this. So we're going to try and restart our setup right here, and we're probably going to get some errors. Now here's the error we're getting. If I double click it, you'll see where we are going. It's because we still have a reference to the genre repository interface to our old genre repository. This is the one from the old setup I did down here. So of course, because I added a new thing to the interface, it also needs the implementation here. Now, if you're annoyed by that, just go and delete this project, but I'm just going to keep the project there for now. So that was all I had to do. Let's restart again, and this time it'll run. And again, it's not even used, this old repository, but yeah, it's still there because if I want to kind of show reference to it later, I'll go back and show you guys. But if you don't get annoyed by it, just delete it and you'll get rid of it and you don't have to worry about it anymore. Okay, the program is running. Let's jump back to Swagger. And what we're going to try and do now is a refresh, because now we should also have a post available. There we go. What do we need to in order to post a new genre? Well, we actually don't even need the ID, so let's remove that. Let's just send a name. Let's say drama. That'll be the new genre. I'll do an execute, and hopefully now we have a new drama right here with the ID of 3. And let's just do a horror drama. I don't know if that even exists. It probably does. There we go. Let's execute that one and see what happens. And there we go, we have number 4. So we could keep going. And now we can also do the read to kind of see that they are starting to show up in our database. And there we go. We have a running create in the database. So that's it for this lesson. Now you even know how you can do a create in a basic way in order to kind of get your first simple object into the database. I'm saying simple because later we'll get relations. It'll be a little different, but still it's the same idea. See you next time. Bye.